Here we go. Here we go. One more time. Everybody's feeling fine. Here we go. Not. Here we go. NSYNC has got the flow. Guess who's back, y'all? Guess who's back? I'm back. Yes, I am. I'm back from summer hiatus. Did you miss me? Did you miss me? Did you miss me? Because I missed you. I did. While I was on summer hiatus, I know you're like, girl, you've been gone for a while. I've been getting repeat episodes for about a good 10 plus weeks, and did, because it's called a hiatus. HIATUS. That sounds right. It's called a hiatus for a reason. That means I was on a break. You know what they say, when black folks break, that's what the blank we do. We what? We break. And I surely did. But I still gave you content. I gave you content. But that's neither here nor there. We're here to kick off season 7 of Coffee with Yvonne, a show for creators and entrepreneurs. And I'm super excited to kick off this season because even though you were getting my podcast auto reply the entire summer, I was still working for y'all. Look at God. Won't he do it? Won't he will? I was still interviewing creators and entrepreneurs who are changing the game in their industry. I was still sliding into people's DMs, asking if they wanted to be on my show. And I was able to complete a few interviews that you will be getting throughout this season of some people I am very excited to share with you in the very near future. But first, for all of you who are new here, how you doing? How you doing? Did your algorithm find me? It did. Welcome. Come on in. Bring your coffee. Come on, because we're going to have a good chat today. We're going to do our Marketing Magic episode. And for those of you who are new here, Marketing Magic is when I go over campaigns that you have seen on social media, on your timeline, and I break down the marketing strategies behind them. And it could be something as simple as, let's see, Cardi B's Bodega Baddie. Oh, we might do a special episode for that because Clock T, the girl has been working. Or it might be other things you may not be aware of, like people who are in the industry, whether it's creativity, business, etc., who are doing great things in their field. But first, let's go ahead and make sure we do a proper introduction. So grab your coffee and let's chat. Ooh, what creamer did I use today? I think I did a hazelnut. You could get that at Aldi because the way these prices set up, we're going to save some money. Anyway, where are my manners? I didn't even catch you up with the things I was doing while on hiatus. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's see what you want to know about first. You want to know about Beyonce and the summer of Cowboy Carter? Do you want to know about Kendrick Lamar, a.k.a. Kung Fu Kenny, a.k.a. K-Dot concert? Do you want to know about the month-ish of Yvonne, which was my birthday, or all three? We're going to do all three. Okay. All right. So for the summer hiatus, I saw Beyonce twice. I took Mom to her first ever Beyonce concert. If you follow me on social media, you saw the video, and when she was very excited to learn that we had floor seats. So I had floor seats to Beyonce, which... First of all, security had to keep holding me back from that little thin line area they had to kind of try to keep you contained. It's Beyonce. Okay? You gonna keep me behind the line for the queen? And she less than 20 feet away from me? I think not. But did Beyonce twice, went to the July 4th show here in the DMV, as well as the show on July 7th with my Beyonce crew. Now, while we didn't have floor seats for that one, I still saw her. And Blue. Clock T, Blue did her thing. Then also did Kendrick Lamar this summer. Went to my second Kendrick Lamar concert, got surprised with floor seats. And when I tell you, K-Dot and SZA put on a show. It was so good. If you ever have a chance to go see K-Dot, even SZA, because she gave an amazing performance, please make sure to add that to your list. Oh, and also, did I tell you? Your favorite podcaster went to Capitol Hill, darling. Yes, she did. I was on my Elle Woods, y'all. I was invited by Representative Yvette D. Clarke to the press conference for the Capitol Hill Congressional Creators Caucus. super excited to be part of that. I was on camera, even did a couple of interviews for media and things like that to discuss the importance of advocacy in the industry and how we can further amplify and support creatives as this industry continues to grow. That was so awesome. And then, of course, I had to close my summer right. Went to Miami for work for ColorCon for the first time, and also went to Universal Studios Epic Universe to experience it. If you ever decide to go, the Ministry of Magic area, they did their big one. They did their big one because, baby, let me tell you something. That flu powder going through there and see the poof. Ah, it was fabulous. Now, I didn't like them prices, but I liked the Ministry of Magic. That was cute. That was cute. Okay. Now that we got me all caught up with my life, and of course, if you want more details, always go to my social media pages. There's more information there. Let's get into these topics because that's what you came for. Then you didn't care to hear about my life and the things that are happening. You came here for the marketing, so let's get down to business. Okay, so on this week's Marketing Magic episode, we're chatting all about HBO Max Seen and Heard when representation tells a story. Darn braces. I need to get them tightened soon. So if you hear me go sis, that's why they gotta get tightened. But look how pretty my teeth are. Yes, dentistry. Oh, if you ever need a good what do they call the people who are the dentists, the fancy word? Is that an orthodontist? I think that's an orthodontist. But Dr. Patrice in DC, she in DuPont Circle next to the good Nordstrom Rack. That's my favorite one, by the way. They got the good stuff. They got the Tahari and the Ralph Lauren. Anyway, that's not why we're here. She's really good. Love her. She's been taking care of my braces for the past 2 years. And first of all, she did her big one. Didn't she do her big one? Look at that. Look at that. Anyway, Yvonne, focus. That's what happens when you take a break. We have a lot to talk about and catch up on. Okay, next up, we have Yeleen Beauty's Makerspace, scaling through community, not just product. And then in our final story that was sent to me by my bestie, hi bestie from college. Hi Danny. She sent me this story about Jenee Naylor and how she's turning digital engagement into revenue. So grab your coffee and let's chat. Wait, I already did my line. Girl, we've been on break too long. I'm sorry, y'all. Anyway, also, for those of you who are new here, if you see me looking down at my screen, I'm going to break the fourth wall for a second. Can I do that? I bring notes to the conversation. See, these are my notes. So to make sure that we have a clear and engaged chat, the notes that I have go through those campaigns that you have seen on social media or across your timeline and breaks it down. So I'm giving you clear answers about the why and the strategies behind them. All right, first up, let's talk about that new special on HBO Max, Seen and Heard by Issa Rae. If you don't know Issa, Big Issa, not the little one, she's our favorite creator behind Insecure, more specifically, Awkward Black Girl, that she started as a YouTube series, Insecure, and also Rap Shit on HBO Max as well, and a slew of other projects in the digital and content space. This miniseries that she created with her production team, Hooray Media, explores the impact and importance of Black representation in television. I got this story from CBS for more details, but I've seen the bits and pieces of it on social media, but went to CBS to dive a bit more into the story. So, pulling an excerpt from the source, award-winning actor and producer and writer Issa Rae is opening up about what has inspired her new documentary, Seen and Heard, the history of Black television. She executive produced the 2-part series that explores the history of Black representation on TV and how Black artists and creators revolutionized the industry while confronting major challenges. What I love about this, before we get into our marketing takeaways, as someone who, one, I watched the series before we talked about it, just full disclosure, but as someone who grew up in the era of, I call it the height of Black television because I am a late 80s baby, but I was raised in the 90s. So to give you context, I came up around that time of a tail end of A Different World, when there were like reruns of the Cosby Show on, things like that. When shows like Fresh Prince, Martin, like all the big players in television, Sister were on during the formative years of my childhood and my teens. So those TV shows really shaped my perception of Black culture throughout media, whether it was, with Fresh Prince, seeing upper middle class Black families, and or seeing Sister and the idea of different structural families, because I was someone who's raised by their mom. My family wasn't considered a nuclear family in a traditional context, but we were still our own family unit. So seeing shows like Sister, where one of the twins, before they all moved in together, was being raised by her mom, because on the show Sister, they're adopted. It was really cool for me to see another dynamic of the family structure played out on television. So let's get into the reason why we're having this discussion, those marketing takeaways. When I was watching the documentary, a few things stood out to me that we're going to call out during this discussion for marketing magic. One, cultural depth equals stronger connection. Things like storytelling. And again, for those of you who are new here, sometimes I'll do this thing where you just see me kind of like lean back because I'm about to get into it because my brain is like thinking overtime. But things like storytelling, it leans into cultural connections for a lot of us, right? Think things like set design, wardrobe, hair, all those representations on TV were so powerful in that space of television during my formative years, and for other people who consume the content as well, who may be within the culture or appreciate the culture. Seeing someone like Moesha on TV who's wearing braids and different braided natural hairstyles, seeing T and Tamara with her curly hair, the Fresh Prince with a high top fade, those are things that were not considered mainstream at the time. I know we had campaigns like My Black is Beautiful, but in terms of mainstream culture, we were still very locked into a certain box. And having the ability to see yourself represented on TV in a more authentic lens was really powerful for someone like me coming up during that era. More importantly, it's important to create, in this lens, content that speaks directly to communities instead of diluting the message for mass appeal. During the documentary, they talked about fighting for that representation. They talked about the importance of telling fully thought out cultural stories and not leaning heavily into stereotypes. There was a whole discussion about how the creator of The Cosby Show, Bill Cosby, and this was discussed through who recently passed unexpectedly, Malcolm Jamal Warner. He discussed how Bill Cosby fought every single day to make sure the stories told through the Cosby Show were authentic, down to when Malcolm Jamal Warner was auditioning for the Cosby Show. And while everybody was loving his audition, Bill was like, "Is that how you would normally talk to your father if you were having that conversation?" And he said, "No, I would never talk to my father that way." He said, "Then why did you do that performance?" And it really brought in the fact that while it may seem like people are acting for a broader audience who may not have exposure to Black culture every day in their life or within the hemisphere of their circle, this is their only perspective into who we really are. So instead of putting on this show of what they think Black culture is, which can be sometimes, I ain't gonna mince words, this is my show, a lot of times rooted in stereotypes, it's important to show authenticity as much as possible to help break down what those stereotypes are and start to put real storytelling and real authentic experiences interjected into these shows. Next, let's talk about how this elevates multiple voices in creation. It really shows through this documentary and through the examples that were provided in the context of the documentary from Blackish, let's see, what was another one? The Jeffersons, and we're moving on up to the east side. Hey! Shows like that, The Jeffersons, The Cosby Show, Sister, Blackish, they were not just about, again, these TV shows. It was about elevating the culture, not just about who's on the camera, but also about the team behind the camera. And I talk about this a lot. I talk about the fact that I have made a conscious decision to be someone in my day-to-day role who is behind the scenes. You may never see or meet me, but you know my work, which light flex. But it's important to have that cultural context of representation, because a lot of times people will project things that we talked about this before with the cultural depth piece. They'll project ideas onto audiences based on their limited perception. So having folks who look like you know, in the writer's room, in the costume design, beauty, hair, makeup, or people who have done the work, let me emphasize that, done the work of understanding broader cultures, is so important. And that means also too, for us smaller creators, or those of us who are in more corporate spaces, of bringing people into projects where we feel that they will be a fit to help elevate it and move it forward in the right direction. Then finally, let's talk about those content gaps or areas of opportunity. Nothing is perfect, right? But more importantly, the document shows how Black TV representation, when we had those big waves on UPN, the CW, Fox, when we had like Living Single and those popular shows, they made moments of visibility that mattered. However, while there was a wave where it was a peak, there was also a drop. It was unfortunate, but there's true context to it. A lot of times, these shows were a way of saving networks that were struggling. And when the networks got the viewership that they wanted, because they discovered that Black viewership, there was a very high amount of Black viewership, which also meant there were dollars to be made through advertising, etc. Once they got what they needed, you started to see a fading out of Black shows in favor of more commercial television. And they show an example of that with the CW, a show Girlfriends. If you're unfamiliar, Girlfriends, which was Tracee Ellis Ross was on that show, one of my favorite shows. Girlfriends never got a proper ending because it was faded out. And they were moved from their core night on TV to Sunday. Then what happened was that's when they debuted a new show that you may be familiar with called Gossip Girl. And I'm not going to cap you. I was a fan of Gossip Girl because I read the books when I was in high school. But Gossip Girl moving into their spot sacrificed that TV show, their viewership, X, Y, and Z, to the point that the show just never came back for a proper finale. Now, at this point in the documentary, I'm starting to notice that there is connective tissue. When you have shows like Living Single, which, if you want to call spade a spade, Living Single inspired the show Friends. It did. And shows like Living Single got faded out. Martin got faded out in favor of, I think they mentioned football. So Fox got the licensing deal with the NFL to show football. And when they started doing that, you started seeing less and less Black shows on TV and more of commercial programming for broader audiences. Unfortunately, when that happens, you are also closing the door for other people to see themselves represented on these media platforms. There's always an opportunity when it comes to Black television or inclusive TV shows. There's always an opportunity to include us in the narrative. I don't think it should just be whenever there's an uproar about something that's happening within greater society, X, Y, and Z. There should always be a conscious need to inject and infuse cultural conversations like they did. Blackish did a great job, but there could be more shows around like Blackish or Fresh Prince that shows in different lights, because a lot of times, and this is just my opinion, unfortunately what happens is the shows that do very well are often the shows that don't show us in a positive context. And it is unfortunate to know that, because a lot of us have been saying for a while that we want more shows that show us just being regular people, because we're multifaceted. We're not one-dimensional. Example, Grand Crew. Grand Crew was one of my favorite shows on TV. I think it lasted roughly 2 seasons. The show just ended. And before the show even ended, the show was being moved to different nights. In my opinion, it wasn't getting the marketing support that it needed to really amplify the show. And they canceled the show. And for a lot of us who are fans, we were so disappointed, because I used the context of this felt for the first time like our version of Seinfeld. And it was really great to have something that just showed us in a different light that was positive. However, as content continues to evolve, you have people who are not waiting for these big studios to greenlight their content. You have people who are doing full series on YouTube, on TikTok, or other media platforms because they want to have control over what they're creating. An example of this is Kev on Stage. Kev on Stage has this show called Churchy that was picked up by BET Plus that's now on its second season. He also has a show called The Hospital that was picked up on BET. The great thing about Kev on Stage is, similar to Issa, he started out creating his own content through his own network, through YouTube, through social media, etc. And now it's been picked up by a bigger platform. And he's able to give all these opportunities to creators in the industry who may get overlooked by traditional studios. To wrap it up with a big bow before we move on to our next topic, it's just important that even if they shut the door in your face, to know that in this digital space that we have available to us, there's still opportunity for us to tell our stories. We don't have to wait for people to tell our stories for us. As long as you have internet connection, a phone with a good light around you, and a good story to tell that can captivate your audience, you can create content that serves the audience that you're looking for. Okay, in our next story, let's talk about Yeleen Beauty Makerspace scaling through community and not just product. So I got this story from Black Enterprise. And to read an excerpt from the source, Yeleen Beauty Makerspace has changed the game for small beauty brand owners in the Washington, D.C. area. Yes, you're right here in the DMV. The Makerspace now reigns as DC's first ever manufacturing hub for independent beauty brands. In the 3,000 square foot facility, brands can scale their operations. It aims to help entrepreneurs elevate their business from their backyards and hosting the entire business process. So let's get into those marketing takeaways. First, let's talk about scalability via infrastructure and access over only product. Rather than just scaling through more than product launches, the business is scaling by building infrastructure, as I mentioned in the blurb, through co-manufacturing facility, membership hub, shared machinery, etc. This also gives people the ability to scale. A lot of times when it comes to small businesses, one of the main issues is how do we grow? But how do we grow smart and how do we grow effective? And what they're doing is essentially giving them the tools and the space to do so they could go to the next level for their business. From a content and marketing strategy perspective, this is also important because it shows how Yeleen is investing in scalable shared platforms or services like workshops, shared resources, and training, which can then create more impact than just adding more product to their business or pushing more sales. Essentially, what they're doing is they're investing in the creator and small business community. On a second marketing takeaway, let's talk about how this is creating shared value to amplify reach. The Makerspace doesn't just serve Yeleen's business, it serves to include many small indie brands, especially the ones owned by people of color. This shared model means marks of credibility, cross-brand exposure, word of mouth in underserved communities, and networks. For marketing, this is essentially providing value to others like tools, space, and training, and it'll also help turn them into advocates and collaborators, which magnifies the reach. Essentially giving the idea of reach one, teach one kind of thing. And then also from a marketing perspective, sometimes people want to do more with their business, but they don't know how to strategize on that end either. So you see people who create these great products, but don't know how to talk to their target market. This will help them get the tools that they need to be effective in their reach and also in their marketing strategy to continue to build a business and reach new customers. And then finally, in that marketing takeaway, let's talk about how this is storytelling across borders and ties to origin matters. So the business sources from women-led cooperatives in Ghana and plans to expand in more African nations. This gives their brand layers, origin stories, ethical supply chains, and a global community. This kind of storytelling gives content more texture and helps brands stand out, especially where beauty is focusing on like authentic ingredients, like, they say things like, raw shea butter, source from this, source from that. It's increasingly important as we further lean into being a global economy that we support those communities where those resources come from. So by the business working directly with those partnerships in Ghana and expanding to other African countries, it really shows how they're wanting to tell a cohesive story that supports our community. What I love too is as this continues to grow as an incubator, I can see this expanding into a bigger square foot space in DC. I can see it somehow being some kind of what do they call it? Proof of concept. Thank you, Yvonne. You're welcome. Proof of concept of how community, business, and activism can be tied in together, because there is a space for ethical business practices in the beauty industry, and more specifically in a industry that is driven by, capitalism. Because ideally, what people sometimes think is you cannot be ethical in business. You have to make a conscious decision to do so. And while you may not grow or scale as fast as someone who chooses not to lean into that, there's still opportunities for you to be just as successful by taking conscious steps forward. In our final story, let's talk about Jenee Naylor and how she's turning digital engagement into revenue. I got this from Afrotech. And let me take a step back here for, again, those of you who are new. A lot of times what I like to do when I pull sources, I like to pull sources from Black or people of color owned media. It is my opinion that sometimes those are overlooked as reputable sources in which we can pull information. By doing so, not only am I amplifying the work of those media outlets, but I'm also amplifying the work of the PR or comms teams who help push those stories to those media outlets and bring more visibility into the work that they're doing. So, to pull an excerpt from the source, after generating excitement for the launches, brands, and products of others, Naylor realized it was time to build something of her own. She often paired eyewear, particularly sunglasses, with her outfits, and she noticed that the content resonated most with her core audience. In a statement from Naylor, she said, "It kind of just naturally started to make sense that this is what people sought me out for and trusted my opinion on, as far as driving sales and commissions. That was one of my highest conversions at any time I would share sunglasses. So it was taking the data and then figuring out what I had the passion for." Before we get into those marketing takeaways, let's dig a little deeper into that quote she gave. There are a couple things that stood out to me. When she said she posted sunglasses, she noticed that it was her highest conversion. For those of you who are unfamiliar, conversions are a way that creators or business know that the things that they're posting or promoting are actually turning into dollars, right? Or you're driving traffic somewhere. You're converting your customer to spend their money or to click out somewhere else. The fact that she noticed that means that she pays attention to her engagement and how effective her strategies are. So she's not just thinking like a content creator, she's thinking like a business owner. Another thing is she noticed the product that people were hungry for based on those conversions. Sometimes I think people confuse launching a product with just doing what is popular. For example, if I were to launch a product, it would make sense for me to do something like glasses because I wear glasses pretty much every single day. I do have contacts, FYI, but I wear glasses every single day, so it would make sense for me to do an eyewear collection. It would not make sense for me to do, say, a makeup collection because I'm not big on wearing makeup every day. Now I do got a kit, and I could do a beat. I could do a beat when I feel like it, but I'm not a really big makeup girling. However, it would make sense for me, like I said, to do glasses. Then let's talk about figuring out what she had the passion for. She just didn't throw a product out there and say, "Here you go, hope you like it." She made sure to study what was making sense and then also think through how she can take that conversion, the data, etc., and build something even further that lived outside of social media and gave her a chance to scale and build her portfolio. So for those marketing takeaways, like I mentioned before, and we're just going to dive into it a bit more now, building your community before the launch. Again, she just didn't want to create a product to give to her audience. She wanted to engage with her audience. Over time, Jenee has built an active audience of followers on social media. If you do not follow her, please do. But she made sure that the audience was there was a need for it, and there was a hunger. But then also she expanded even further. She just didn't, again, post a link in bio and say, go ahead and support. She also built 12 p.m. Studios. 12 p.m. Studios has a story behind it. The story is connected to her birthday, her wedding anniversary, and her mom's initials. So not only is she thinking through of a product, but she tied it into an actual business where the product can live underneath that umbrella. To let you guys know, Pink Dollhouse Marketing, my business, serves in the same structural way. Pink Dollhouse Marketing as the umbrella, it serves as the core home for Coffee with Yvonne. Coffee with Yvonne falls underneath that umbrella. Yvonne Pearson, as a content creator, falls underneath that umbrella, as well as the consulting services I offer for different projects falls underneath that umbrella too. So essentially what she did with launching 12 p.m. Studios, she's now creating a structural framework for future business ventures that just makes sense to help support that and also amplify awareness and build capital gain. More importantly, cultivating that trust, she allowed for people to see her personal style first and then tied her personal style with her passion for sunglasses to then promote it. So she leveraged her own image to promote the product. So that way she was essentially her own model. By being her own model, being her own customer, people believe what she was actually selling and not that she was just trying to push another product or partnership. Second, making the brand personal and relatable. Like I mentioned with 12 p.m. Studios, that has a deeper story tied to her mom's initials, her birthday, and wedding date. Making that personal touch turns casual followers into a loyal following. It's so important to have an emotional connection to the brand. Emotional connectivity also ties into authenticity. People forget how important it is to be authentic and real with your audience. There's a reason why people like Cardi B do well, Tracee Ellis Ross, Issa Rae, and a slew of others do well on both in-person engagement and digital platforms because people feel like they're authentic. They also feel like they have an emotional tie to them because they choose to share more about their story to allow for people to come in and feel like they could actually have a cup of coffee or meet them on the street and not feel like there's a barrier of, they're off-putting. Now, we do understand boundaries because boundaries are very important, but building an emotional connection with your audience by allowing them in just a little bit feels like if I were to talk to them, I feel like I'm talking to a friend or someone I can have a real conversation with. More importantly, like I mentioned, when you're creating, make sure to infuse that authenticity into your storytelling. It's not just important for you to tell me why you love this sweater. Let me see how you wear the sweater. Let me see you running errands in it. Or let me see that, you're trying to find the right fit or like how you love the material. Or maybe sharing a personal story if you struggle with eczema and how the sweater, by the way, the sweater is the example for this context. The sweater helps your skin not to feel like you're itching all day long or it feels soft and not irritating you. That I can connect with because some people do struggle with their skin or finding materials that don't feel itchy. Infusing authenticity with storytelling will move the needle a lot more than just trying to have a perfect image that will barely move any product. And then finally, let's focus on that quality and affordability. She just didn't give people a cheap product from Temu and said, here are these glasses I created and called it a day. She actually was heavily involved in creating the product and making sure that what she was selling to her audience is something that she was indeed a customer of. Again, authenticity, storytelling matters. When you have that authenticity and you're telling a story, by the time you push out the product, people believe what you're telling them. By offering stylish frames in a price range that was affordable to our audience, the frames are priced between $125 and $145. The consumers are getting a high quality product. They're supporting a Black woman-owned business, and they're also supporting a creator that they've known for quite a while on their social media timeline. Also, it's giving people a piece of luxury without a high price point. While $125 or $145 is considered high, let's keep it real in context. When you look at designer eyewear, it can be double, sometimes triple that price. That $125 to $145 is actually considered an affordable range and still provides a way for people to have a piece of her personal brand without breaking the bank. Okay, so those are all of our stories for today. I know we just got back together, but don't worry. There will be a show next week. We record the show every week unless I give you a heads up there will not be a show. But every week, Coffee with Yvonne, we drop the episode on Thursdays across YouTube and social platforms, as well as the podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, you can get the show. Make sure to remember that you can always follow Coffee with Yvonne on Instagram and Threads at Coffee with Yvonne. You can sign up for my newsletter to get personalized audio and video content, Coffee with Yvonne podcast episodes, and marketing magic breakdowns of your favorite campaigns that I do not cover on this show or on social media. Okay. For my personal account, where you can see me cut up and be just a regular schmeggler girl from PG County, go ahead and find me on IG and TikTok, aka the Clock app, at Yvonne_Creative Marketer. To learn more about me and my business that I own, that's copywritten and registered with the federal government, you can go ahead. Yvonne, what is wrong with you? You can go ahead and go to pinkdollhousemarketing.com or at pinkdollhousemarketing on Instagram. You can slide into my DMs. That's cool. And more importantly, my fellow creatives, I'm going to say this every week till you get it. Make sure to keep showing up, keep creating, and that your voice matters. I'll chat with you soon next time on Coffee with Yvonne, and have a great day, okay? All right. Okay, bye! Coffee with Yvonne is produced and edited by Yvonne Pearson. Coffee with Yvonne is created by Pink Doll House Marketing. You can catch the latest episodes by subscribing to Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.